We will be enjoying a war, action film inspired by true events entitled Ninth Company. There will be spoilers ahead, chill out and enjoy. The movie begins one stormy night in Siberia, USSR in the year 1988. Young Russian men say goodbye to their loved ones as they enlist as soldiers. The recruitment officer inspects the men's bag and right after, the new recruits are ordered to have their hair cut. Later, Lutai, a recruit with a silver tooth, punches the barber in the face and trims the barber's head after teasing Lutai about his suit. After a while, Voroby, another recruit, looks for the 6th unit. He stumbles upon the same group of men from earlier and sees them drinking. Knowing that they'll undergo training together, Lutai proactively introduces the squad. First off, he introduces an aspiring painter named Ruslan. Then a couple of normies named Stas and Suri. Lastly, he introduces the two delinquents Chugun and Rabah. Afterward, the shamed barber comes in together with an officer and points at Lutai and his squad. Everybody stood up ready for whatever comes next, but the officer disregards the barber's complaint and smacks him on the head after knowing that the squad he reported were future members of the Afghan unit. Soon, they arrive in Uzbekistan where they are joined by another recruit named Pinochet. Later, a tough-looking officer named Lieutenant Digalo arrives and shouts at the recruits to stand in line. The lieutenant then informs them that he will be training them to be a Soviet paratrooper for the next 3 months. Then he orders the recruits to follow him running as he drives off. After arriving at barracks near the border of Afghanistan, Lieutenant Digalo asks the men's names to familiarize himself with them. When it was Ruslan's turn, he starts getting philosophical. He then gets a jab in the gut from the lieutenant in response. Lutai gets 1-2 for the barbershop incident. Later that day, the recruits are ordered to stuff some rocks in their backpacks and get up on the hill. They struggle to make it on top, but as soon as they arrive, the soldiers beat them up and push them back down. After they made their way down, the lieutenant screams at the recruits how the more they bleed in training, the less they'll bleed in war. One evening during bedtime, Lutai and the others couldn't get their head around why they needed to train for 3 months while the other units were just in training for a few weeks and then were deployed to the front lines. Rabia heard a rumor that Lieutenant Digalo lost all his men back in Afghanistan and lost all his wits, and now, they're stuck with Digalo and his training madness. They were partly right. Digalo made them taste hell in training, day in and day out. He wakes them up early in the morning, makes them rush getting in uniform, and from there on, he starts demeaning and harshly training them. In one instance, during training and running up the hill, Chugun was caught with jacket in his backpack instead of rocks. The jacket absorbs the impact and lessens the pain if Chugun was to inevitably fall on his back. But tough luck for the young recruit. Lieutenant Digalo wasn't pleased, and so, as punishment, he beats Chugun to a pulp after training. Days later, the squad doing some running exercises when Voroby fell on his back and couldn't take much more. Lutai and Chugun ran back and carries their buddy until they reach the top of the hill. After they make it up top, Voroby exclaims that he will quit the next day. Stas also declares that he's quitting as well, stating that he received a letter from his mother a few days back stating that she's sick and with no one to take care of his mother. It was reasonable. The following day, during the formation of the whole regiment, the colonel addresses the men and asks them if anyone wanted to quit and doesn't want to serve in Afghanistan. Voroby almost takes a step forward but decides against it. Stas also changes his mind. Training resumes as usual. During a class regarding plastic explosives, Ruslan takes hold of the bomb and molds it into a human eggplant. The recruits chuckle quietly. But when the instructor grabbed hold of it and made some remarks about the bomb that makes it into an eggplant pun, the class couldn't help but laugh out loud, disturbing the class. The instructor informs Ruslan that he's going to report the incident to the lieutenant. Later that day, the painter makes his way into Digalo's quarters thinking that he'll get a beating. Turns out, the lieutenant wasn't fazed by the incident and wants Ruslan to paint his portrait for a woman who he's been writing back home. The following day, a captain was teaching the squad relevant cultures in Afghanistan that could either get them killed or save their life. The captain explains that Afghanistan is a Muslim state and so, it has different rules and perspectives on life and death. Like how the Muslims are not afraid to die and kill an infidel since it's an easy way to paradise. That disrespecting their women could mean a death sentence. And that it shouldn't be underestimated because, in its long and proud history, Afghanistan hasn't been conquered by another nation. During target practice, the whole squad discovers that Ruslan was a great marksman. When Lieutenant Digalo tests him to hit a coin a few meters away, Ruslan hits it without breaking a sweat. Soon, the whole squad was asked to trek the steep hill again. This time, Lutai informs his buddies to not gas themselves on the way up, and hold the legs of the paratroopers lying in wait at the summit while others fight them off. Later, the plan works. They manage to conquer the hill after dozens of attempts and the whole squad couldn't help but celebrate. One evening, while the trainees are sleeping, Lieutenant Digalo is in full uniform and wakes up the whole squad. He then starts rampaging like a madman. After things calmed down, Daigalo just left and went back to his quarters. Meanwhile, everybody was rather calm, like they were already used to it, and figured that the lieutenant had another bad dream. Ruslan then shares that the lieutenant sent out a letter asking to be deployed back to Afghanistan but was rejected. During the last few days of training, the bonds forged by sweat and blood make the unlikely of friends close. One evening, the whole squad was drinking and smoking heavily while having a bit of fun with the only girl in the whole camp. Soon, training comes to an end. Lieutenant Daigalo wanted to say something but couldn't get the words out. Instead, he just gave them a snappy salute and sees the boys depart. Upon arrival at Bagram Air Base in Afghanistan, they are met by a group of troops who have completed their military service and are on their way home. One of the outgoing troops offers Lutai a talisman that he claims has kept him safe over countless deployments and firefights. As soon as the transport plane carrying the departing troop gets off the ground, it is hit by an enemy missile from adjacent mountains and crashes, giving the new recruits their first taste of battle. Not a single soul on the plane, including the man who gave Lutai the talisman, survives. The soldiers are quickly assigned to the 9th Company, where their trainer and drill instructor, Daigalo, formerly served. Pinochet and Riba, on the other hand, are sent to a different unit, separating them from Lutai and the others. The fresh troops are then welcomed by Lieutenant Kohol in a manner similar to Daigalo. But as they were to fight together, Kohol wasn't as harsh as the latter. He then briefs the boys on their escort mission. Later, they soon arrive in a makeshift stone fortress up in a mountain. While drinking with the men stationed there, they were notified that a few Afghans were making their way up in hopes of causing a scene, but the Russians caught them first. One of the soldiers holding a sniper recognizes one of the enemies and calls out his name, Ahmed. He then starts cursing at the Afghan. Turns out the same Afghan has been stalking them on many occasions. While on a patrol, Vorobi accidentally encounters Ahmed. The Afghan tries to calmly pacify the situation, stating that like Vorobi, he has a girl waiting for him. Ahmed slowly turns his back and was about to leave when he accidentally loses his balance. Vorobi discharges his weapon out of nervousness and kills Ahmed. His buddies come almost immediately and congratulate Vorobi on his first kill. A soldier stated that Ahmed had killed 3 Russians before. Afterward, the same soldier then planted a grenade beneath Ahmed's corpse. 6 months later, the 9th Company starts digging and fortifying a position high up in one of the Afghan mountains. Riba and a few men from his company arrive all bloodied. It was clear that they'd just seen action and lost a lot of men. The captain asks Riba's friends to look after the poor young soldier. The man couldn't speak and was not in his right mind. It was like the lights are on but no one is home. While on guard duty, Stats falls asleep. Lieutenant Kohol beats him to a pulp so that it will serve a lesson to other men in the company that sleeping while on guard duty has heavy consequences. A month later, the soldiers of the 9th Company are still stationed at the same location. Ruslan was drawing some outlines to tattoo on his squadmate when he was called by Lieutenant Kohol. The officer orders Ruslan to get him some matches. With supplies running very low, it was very hard to come by. Ruslan sees a local mountain dweller and asks for matches in exchange for canned food. The local guides the young Russian toward the village and into his house. He was then given 2 boxes of matches. Ruslan was making his way back when their commanding officer along with a few troops from his unit met him halfway. Without the knowledge from the task Kohol gave to Ruslan, the CO punches Ruslan in the gut as punishment for leaving his position. Days later, a convoy of Soviet tanks, trucks, and troops were making their way to the 9th Company's position when suddenly it was ambushed. A heavy firefight ensues between the Afghan Mujahideen and Soviet troops. With the element of surprise and profound knowledge of the terrain, the Afghans managed to catch the Soviet troops off guard. The insurgents destroyed a few tanks and trucks. Amidst the chaos, the Afghans killed the decorated 9th Company commanding officer and including Riba. Lieutenant Kohol, Lutai, and the others try to pursue the enemy but lost them in the cave tunnels. Soon, the whole platoon regroups and decides to head towards the nearby village in hopes of catching the instigators. Stas was ordered to check a courtyard for any signs of enemies. Left alone, Stas carefully clears the corners but let his guard down when he sees a young boy, which proves to be a fatal mistake. The young boy shoots Stas. Lutai immediately runs to his friend's position and sprays bullets, killing the boy instantly. The whole squad carries Stats out of the village and tries to stop the bleeding. But it was all for naught. Stats breathes his last and dies. Just soon as Stats died, the Soviets fires hundreds of missiles and obliterates the village. During New Year's Eve, with a few months left until their discharge, the squad was in for a surprise when Pinochet was assigned to them. Lutai, Vorobi, Ruslan, and Chugun go immediately to hug their brother. Later, the whole squad makes a toast for their fallen comrades and parties like crazy afterward. Early the next day, Ruslan goes out near the cliff to paint the Afghan landscape. Despite its turbulent and bloody history, the landlocked country has its fair share of beauty. But suddenly, a group of men in black emerges at Ruslan's back. The painter manages to warn his comrades but was immediately shot in the head. His blood splatters on the canvas, making it his last art. Hundreds if not thousands of Afghans came to attack the Soviet outpost. Despite being outnumbered, the Soviet soldiers stands their ground. After heavy bombardments from the Afghans, Lieutenant Kohol discovers that he's the only officer left standing. Soon, it turned to close-quarter combat. Lutai was knocked to the ground while Chugun goes full-on Rambo mode with his machine gun. Eventually, the Soviets come on top. Fatigued and a few men left, Kohol and the others try to be hopeful. Not soon after, another wave of attacks commenced. The Afghans are gaining ground. Eventually, Lieutenant Kohol and a few veterans are out of the fight. Meanwhile, Chugun gets hit a few times while trying to save an injured Vorobi. With no chance of making it to safety, Vorobi pulls out a grenade and kills himself along with a few insurgents. After the death of Vorobi, the remaining Soviets went on a rampage and charged at the enemy. Pinochet gets killed while trying to advance on the enemy. After hours of intense fighting and waves of attack, Lutai assumes command of the 6 survivors of the 9th Company. They checked their remaining ammo and it wasn't even enough. Not soon after, the Afghans attack again and the remaining paratroopers were willing to give it their all until the very last. Fortunately, 2 attack helicopters come to their aid. But they were hours too late. The whole company was wiped out. The movie ends with Lutai as the only survivor and stands in attention to report to the colonel that the 9th Company holds its ground so that the convoy may pass safely. The colonel informs Lutai that there will be no convoy and hugs the young soldier tight, knowing full well what he has gone through. Lutai couldn't control his emotion and screamed his lungs out. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this and to help the channel grow.